Is it safe to say that the Clinton campaign colluded with the Russians to accuse Donald Trump of colluding with the Russians?
All you got to say is that the Clinton campaign funded the information that showed up in the dossier. The Clinton campaign funded the information that was put together concerning an alleged secret communications channel between Trump and Alpha Bank, which was presented to the FBI through Mr. Sussman. So, yeah, there are those things that definitely occurred, and the evidence establishes that.
There was former special counsel John Durham testifying yesterday that the FBI ignored Hillary Clinton's plan to link former President Donald Trump to Russia. We knew it then, Mike Baker. We're getting continued confirmation on this. It's a stunning story and ripped the country apart.
It did, and your point is exactly right. We knew it then, and what I mean by that is maybe I'm just overly cynical these days, but the Durham report, and really any report that comes out in an investigation based in Washington, D.C. these days, anybody who expected something consequential, anybody who expected some actions, some results, again, sorely disappointed, but they're not paying attention. Investigations go to die in Washington, D.C., and nothing comes of it. But what struck me about the hearings with John Durham was the irony and the lack of self-awareness of somebody like Adam Schiff grilling Durham, interrupting him repeatedly, and acting self-righteous about misinformation or disinformation when he spent years seeking out any available camera so he could stand there and essentially just tell lies about the Russia collusion story.
That's right.
And there's no sense of, yeah, I did that. I'm sorry. I'm embarrassed. Right. In fact, now he's censured, and he seems to be proud of it.
We've got to talk about this. I want to get back to the bias in the FBI, but the reaction from Democrats to this. The House yesterday voted to censor California Congressman Adam Schiff for President Trump's campaign colluding with Russia, which he kept saying over and over and over again. Here's Kevin McCarthy censoring, leading that proceeding yesterday. Watch this.
The yeas are 213 and the nays are 209. With 6 answering present, the resolution adopted. Without objection, the motion to consider is laid on the table. House will be in order.
So you've got the Democrats yelling shame at the Speaker of the House for the censure of Adam Schiff. We gotta vote these people out. I mean, they are like clowns. I mean, it doesn't matter what side you're on, Democrat or Republican, independent, wherever you are. We all know this was a made-up story, and it went viral across the world that Trump colluded with Russia. It put a sitting president on defense. Every time he had to do an interview or face reporters, he had to say, I didn't collude with Russia. In the meanwhile, you've got China coming at us, trying to undermine the United States. And instead of everybody agreeing this was a lie, Adam Schiff was the chairman of the Intelligence Committee. He should not have been going on with Chuck Todd and all the other people on MSNBC and NBC and saying that collusion was in plain sight. He's suggesting as chairman of the Intelligence Committee he knew something that we didn't. He didn't. He lied. And now you've got these Democrats saying shame to Kevin McCarthy. You should be voted out. OK, this is something we should all agree on.
Yeah, using his position, privileged position as head of the Intel Committee to and people would look at that and they go, well, Adam Schiff, look at that. He must know something. Right. Otherwise, he wouldn't stand there and say, well, the evidence is clear. We have solid evidence. I mean, and all that does, and your point is right, it doesn't matter where you stand on the political spectrum, right? But all that does is feed into foreign interests that are not aligned with our own, in particular the Putin regime, the Chinese regime under Xi, who are constantly looking for ways to undermine the credibility of the United States and our voting system and our democracy. And so this effort by Adam Schiff to keep pushing this story, but yeah, it is striking. And again, it's whether it's the Democrats standing there and shouting shame or whether it's Adam Schiff grilling Durham, it's it's amazing that there's such a lack of this self-awareness.
Yeah, yeah. And all of those Democrats who were clapping and celebrating, I'm going to wear this as a badge of honor, you're an embarrassment. And you should know that. You need to be voted out. Durham was asked about the bias in the FBI. Here's what he said.
That's not how the FBI performs. In this particular case, as is reflected in the report, there appear to be persons in the FBI who were central to opening the investigation that had rather strong views concerning then candidate Trump. There ought to be repercussions if that ever happened in connection with an agent that I was working with and I knew about it.
It's a complete weaponization of arguably our most important law enforcement agency. Kaylee.
Yeah, and I think we need to be clear that this came from the very top of FBI leadership. One of the stunning moments from the Durham testimony was he shared an experience talking with an agent who had been assigned to the Crossfire Hurricane case. And when Durham revealed all of the information that had been withheld from this agent by his superiors, the agent became emotional and had to leave the room.
He had to walk out of the room.
He realized that he had been deliberately misled by his bosses in order to stage this campaign. It is shameful, and you're so right. I mean, the Democrats who are celebrating this as if it's something to be proud of, they're worse than clowns. They are vile. They take our rule of law and they are laughing at it, and they are intentionally making a mockery out of it for the rest of the world to see. It's disgusting, and they do need to be held accountable.
Stop lying to the American people. It doesn't matter what side you're on. This was a lie. This needs to be righted. This was a wrong. And what's not about Trump? This is about fairness.
Right. Well, it's about a process, right? The investigative process needs to follow and should always follow certain protocols, like John Durham was saying, right? Now, he also pointed out during the hearing yesterday, there should be repercussions. Well, of course there should be repercussions, but that's the problem with Washington, D.C. And as going back to my original point, these investigations never result in the repercussions. There are ways to do this. The Republicans need to stop yelling about defund the FBI. That's not going to happen, and it's not productive to the you can identify
the weaponization.
Well, you identify the individuals, as has been done in part by the Durham report, and then you have the repercussions, right? You deal with the people who are responsible for this, but we don't do that. There's, again, people are getting frustrated with the government process because they never see a result.
You know, we're talking about the leadership of the FBI. I want to also name the leadership at the CIA at that time. I don't want to put you on the spot because you worked at the CIA for so long, but John Brennan is the same as Jim Comey.
Yeah. There was definitely a sense that John Brennan was, how do we say this, overly political.
Yeah,
right? And
that's right.
Became very close during his time with President Obama. And that's not a good thing. You want top cover from the White House for any director of the CIA or for the intel community, but you want an arm's length relationship, right? You never want a politicized agency or federal organization of any sort.
Yep, exactly.